It's just harder to make friends as adults, but not less important. People don't need that many people to be close to. It's not a quantity issue, it's a quality issue. It's the depth in those relationships that is lacking. And everybody is secretly, whether they want to admit it or not, wanting a little bit more. Yet there's a gap in the culture and in the friendship culture that we're seeing, and it's creating a lot of loneliness.
Dr. Elisabeth Crain, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here today. You have been coined the shrink for the modern human, and with over a decade of clinical practice and an upcoming book on adult friendship called The Friendship Lab, I'm really excited to talk to you about the state of modern friendships because, like most things in adulting, we're really never taught how to create strong, healthy friendships. So I think this is a really important topic.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about it.
Amazing. Well, we'll dive right in at the beginning. I think everyone listening to this episode can agree that friendships feel a lot harder in adulthood. What are some of the variables at play here that make adult friendships so tough to make and to maintain?
So I always like to go back in time. We think about friendship from our childhood, right? We're in elementary school, we're stuck with a group of people that we grew up with. And it's happenstance. It's just whatever we grew up with. And then we make friends accordingly on the schoolyard or in the classroom, or whether you were an athlete or a cheerleader or whatever. And then those people become hopefully your lifelong friends. But sometimes, you move through life and you lose touch with people. But you don't get to choose those people. It was sort of selected for you early on. And then you become an adult and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go out into the world and make friends. And there isn't a pool of people to pick from anymore. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, how do I navigate this? Nobody taught me how to do this. I have to go and approach people, sort of like asking someone out on a date. You have to ask people out to get coffee on friendship dates. And you have to determine for yourself, what kind of people do I want to have as friends? And there's so much more effort that goes into adulting friendship. And we sort of we took it for granted as kids or in college even, for that matter, because you're in another set of pool when you're in college, right? And so you keep going from pool to pool. And then all of a sudden you're in the job world or you're a parent, and it just becomes so much harder to make friends. Also, time becomes a bigger barrier to entry with people because you're busy. People are busy, got jobs, got families, got stuff to do. And so it's just harder to make friends as adults, but not less important. And so that's where it becomes trickier. It's like, well, it's really important. Friends are vital for so many things. And yet making friends becomes so much harder.
Yeah, I completely agree. That lack of proximity, that lack of just routine with friendships built into them, the availability that we seem to lack as we get older, those are all huge factors. There's also this funny thing that happens where I think all of us really want friends. We care about friendship, but so many of us have that experience of feeling guilty that we're really shitty at keeping in touch. I am the worst with this. I am plagued with this guilt because friendships matter to me so much. My friends are everything to me. And it's I will do anything for you except text you back. I don't know why I'm like this, but I think a lot of other people, especially probably millennials, are having this experience of really prioritizing friendships in a lot of ways, but not being able to keep that communication thread going digitally. Do you see people struggling with this? Do you know what's going on with this?
Yeah, so what's happening is there's lack of momentum, right? So if you're not texting someone back timely, you're sort of losing momentum in the friendship. And people are navigating at any given point in time different things in their lives. And so if there's this sort of gap in the communication or there's a lag in the friendship, the messaging on that can be not good a lot of times. You're not a priority, you're not that important to me. And maybe it's not personal, like you said, it's just something that I'm not that good at or I struggle with. But for other people, they're saying, I really need my friend to show up for me. Where are they? And going through this specific situation right now, I really want to talk to my friend about that. So that gap can create at times sort of a barrier in the friendship, and that barrier can create a lag, and that lag can inhibit the friendship from developing further. And so what people are seeking isn't actually more friends. I've done the research a little bit on this. It's not that people don't have friends. People have friends and they feel pretty good about the amount of friends that they have. It's the depth in those relationships that is lacking. And everybody is secretly, whether they want to admit it or not, wanting a little bit more. They're wanting to be able to feel like they can share parts of themselves with their friends that they don't know about. And people want intimacy. They don't want it just with their partners. They want it with their friends. But yet there's a gap in the culture and in the friendship culture that we're seeing, and it's creating a lot of loneliness. That's sort of the byproduct of it. People are feeling alone in their friendships, but nobody's talking about it or saying it. And so we have to do something about that.
Right. Okay. So it's not a lack of like connections. It's not like we don't have enough friends. It's that we're lacking the depth in those friendships, which is really interesting. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about this. And we talk about the loneliness epidemic. We talk about how isolated we are. And it does feel like a real antidote to that is going deeper with the people that we do have around us. I'm curious if you think that this depth gap and our kind of current inability to go deep, or just whatever's blocking us from going deeper in our friendships, is this self-protection? Are people scared of being too much or being rejected or being too vulnerable? Or is this we're not finding the right people who can meet us in that deep place?
Well, insecurity doesn't end in adulthood. I will say that.
Sadly.
Right? We think like, oh, well, they're teenagers, so they're insecure, or they're kids and they're figuring it out, so they're insecure. And so by the time you become adult, that insecurity and that fear of rejection, the fear of vulnerability, those factors are still at large and people are still struggling to navigate them. And so a lot of times people say to themselves, well, I'd rather just not try because I'm too afraid of rejection, or I'm too afraid of if I share parts of myself with somebody that it's not going to be well received. And so that fear of just not opening up is another barrier in the friendship to deepen the friendship, because we know that our closest relationships and the people, and by the way, people don't need that many people to be close to. It's not a quantity issue, it's a quality issue. So finding even just one really good girlfriend is a true blessing. You can call at any given moment and be like, oh my gosh, today like is annihilating me, and just blow off, like everything on your brain, and that they can receive you, support you, and not judge you. I cannot stress enough how valuable that person is. If you have that person, please don't take them for granted. But also, if you don't have that person, they may be out there. So that's so much value add to somebody's life. And so I would hate to think that fear or a fear of vulnerability or any of those things is stopping people. So with some of the stuff that I say is like, hey, just take risks. You have to take calculated risks with people. You have to put yourself a little bit out there. It doesn't have to be grand gestures, but casually trying people on for size, I think, is a big part of adulting and making friends in adulthood.
It's so true. I feel like we can really easily create these self-fulfilling prophecies. I know for me, I had like a big thing about being scared of being let down. Like it would be so painful to be disappointed by people or to have them not show up for me. So when I was going through a tough time, I would just get really introverted and go inward, because I was like, oh, if I tell someone, if I open up and let people know I'm struggling and they can't support me or they don't show up, like that's an even deeper point of devastation, and I can't bear it. But then I was just creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of feeling like isolated and like worsening my, how I felt and being more lonely, rather than opening up the door and being like, let's just try. Let's just see what happens. So it can show up in so many different ways. What would the first step that you would recommend people try right now if they're like, oh, I don't have that closeness, I don't have that intimacy, I don't know where to begin with my friends?
Beginning is I'm a big fan of slow burn relationships and slow burn friendships. I think that the best relationships we have in our lives always happen in that trajectory. And I actually admonish people on the flip side. I'm like, well, if things feel too good too soon or too exciting and there's too many dopamine hits, pump the brakes a little bit because you need more information, and information
Mm,
becomes vital and valuable for navigating later relationships. Just taking that small calculated risk of approaching somebody and saying hi or doing a little bit of small talk. I'm not a big fan of chit chat, although I did live in Texas and
yeah.
I learned to be quite good at it because the Texans are excellent chit chatters.
Yeah. Same.
But sometimes the good starting point is chit chat. I won't lie to you.
You got to warm people
Hey,
up.
what's going on
It's
kind of
true.
thing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
I
easiest
hate
starting
small
point.
talk, but you got to like start somewhere.
Yeah. So just sort of opening that door with people with a little bit of the chit chat is a good entry point, and then deepening it from there.
And in terms of the deepening, would you invite them in or would you just try it? Like, would you be like, hey, like, I've been really craving going deeper with some of my friends. Like, I'd love to know more about you and, this thing that matters to you. Or I'd love to tell you a bit more about like this thing that I went through or something from my past. Like, how can someone who actually struggles with vulnerability start being vulnerable?
Right. Well, so it's funny. I mean, I'll just use myself as an example. I see all these moms all the time, and we're always like, let's get together, let's get together. And everyone's saying, let's get together, right? Because we all actually want to get to know one another, but nobody's actually making solidified plans or reaching out over
Yeah.
texting, like, are you available next Tuesday at 5 o'clock to grab a glass of wine? And we're all just sort of on this periphery zone where we're all like, let's try this, but nobody's taking that first leap. So I said to this mom, like, let's actually make a plan. I would like to get to know you better. And it was just as simple as that. And she's like, okay, great. And so now we're going to pick a time and day. And she knows that I would like to get to know her more than just like in a passing way. And we even were joking, like every time I see you, like she's chasing a child one direction, I'm chasing one the other direction. And so we're sort of ships passing in the night, but we're waving and acknowledging each other and wanting more from each other, but can't get there. And so it just took one leap of faith on my half saying, let's make a plan and I want to get to know you better. That's
Mm.
it.
It really is so much like dating. And that was interesting what you said about slow burn versus fast burn friendships. I'm like such a fast burn person. So I'm probably a red flag. Like I meet someone and if I vibe with them, I'm like, and they are my best friend now. So what's the concern with fast burn? And like, how do you know a slow burn is going somewhere versus just like a slow thing that's never going to amount to anything?
So the fast burn can crash and burn. Let me just say that. The likelihood of the crash and burn with the fast burn is greater than the slow burn. So even though it initially feels better and you're getting more dopamine hits, somebody's coming on really strong, maybe you're getting love bombed. Friends do this, by the way. It's not just in
Yeah,
the dating world.
true.
There are people who it feels good because it's like, oh my gosh, this person, the wanting to be wanted kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But is it real? That's the question you have to ask yourself, because when you have a friendship, you want sustainability. You want somebody that you hopefully have throughout the course of your life. And you don't want something that's going to crash and burn because it's going to leave you devastated and also make you question, was this real? And so with a lot of people who come on too strong, too fast, it's too good to be true kind of thing. The potential for crash and burn and it actually not amounting to anything with depth or it being real is a higher likelihood. And so it's funny because like sometimes the slow burn doesn't feel as good. And I tell my friends this, I'm
yeah.
like, well, it may not feel as exciting. You may not feel like you're on this roller coaster or getting these like adrenaline rushes from these people or like, this is my person, I'm so excited, from a slow burn relationship. But that person may end up being your steadiest companion, your long-term best friend, the person like who cheers you on during your successes and is genuinely there and there for you during your darkest moments. And that's everything.
This all kind of reminds me of, again, like we talk about this in romantic relationships all the time, but not really in friendships, and how our attachment styles kind of creep in and can influence things. How do attachment styles show up and shape the way we are in our platonic friendships?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because people who have gone to therapy and have done work on themselves understand if they have a mother wound or a sister wound, they tend to understand their attachment style to other people, whether it's a secure attachment, insecure, avoidant, or disorganized. Those are the 4 types of attachments. And then they're able to recognize how they're showing up in relationships. So, I mean, that's really vital. But then there's people who haven't really done a lot of work on themselves and are sort of navigating life unconscious. And they're playing out what I call the Freudian repetition, which is their attachment style. It will play out in every relationship in your life. It'll play out in your marriage. It'll play out with your friends. It'll play out with your family continually until that gets paradigm shifted or worked on. And so people who have insecure attachment, that attachment wound will play out in friendship, feeling insecure. And so that insecurity could lead to competition or other problems in the relationship. Avoidant people, that's another thing too, because maybe they're not as receptive or responsive. And so they avoid confrontation or they avoid certain things. And then that becomes a barrier in the friendship as well. And so that's where therapy comes in. Always like, go to therapy, because it, if people just went to therapy and worked on themselves, our world would just be such a easier place to navigate. But yeah, it shows up everywhere. It's all over the place.
And it can show up in different ways, which I think is really interesting because I used to think like if you're anxiously or avoidantly, attached in romantically, that's how you'll be with all of your relationships. But I have found I'm more securely attached romantically and actually more anxiously attached with friendships. Like I have a lot more kind of anxiety with friends of like, are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Do they like me as much as I like them? And romantically, I'm like, I have a lot of just self-belief that I'm a good partner and have a good partner and I don't feel as shaky in that. So it's interesting how different relationships can pull out different, kind of parts of your attachment wounding.
Right. And there's sibling wound, mother wound, and father wound. So those all speak to different areas of the psyche and different early experiences that sort of play out later on in life. And so for you, those may just be different.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously self-work and learning more about yourself, going to therapy, that can really help understand how your attachment styles are showing up in relationships. Is there a way to create more stability for your friends? If you have a friend who you can tell is like more avoidant or more anxiously attached and they're struggling, is there something you can do to help them move towards a more secure attachment?
Yeah. I mean, I think I always say find out who's criticizable. It's important to be able to take criticism. Everyone should get good at it because it's a really big asset for life. And the word criticism, it's more like feedback, right? Because none of us are perfect. Everyone's human. We're all figuring it out. We're all together, sort of in this, whatever you want to say, trite but true. And so I like to sort of be gentle with people because everybody is struggling in their own way. And so being able to name things in a gentle way, like, hey, I noticed this. Oh, or I noticed that, versus like, you did this or whatever. So it's a way of just becoming more this detached observer, we call it. We do this in meditation, really helps people get away from the inner critic. So you just sort of bring your own observer, like, oh, I noticed, that every time we get together, you're 30 minutes late. What's up with that? Is that like a pattern, or are things really hectic in your life right now, or whatever the situation is? And so I know that tends to usually go over well, but then of course know your audience because some people don't want to take in anything. So yeah.
Hmm. That is helpful. And actually, when I'm thinking of the friendships that actually made me the most secure and helped me build more security in friendships, they were the ones that had like a real openness to feedback and invited it. And they were like, hey, if things feel off, if I'm doing something you don't like, if you're doing something that doesn't feel good for me, let's talk about it. And I'm like, wait, we can do that? Wow. And I started to feel so much more comfortable and secure and know that like just because a little something might be wrong, it doesn't mean things are going to be over. It doesn't mean, there's a catastrophe lurking. It's just an invitation to talk more and hopefully deepen.
And I do think that sometimes conflict, as hard as it is for people, is always an opportunity when done well. It's not always a negative thing because nobody's going to agree about anything 100% of the time anyways. So if you're able to get through a conflict with a friend or talk through something through and get out on the other side, there's actually bounty in that. And you can deepen the friendship because you understand one another better. You're like, oh, that actually, it comes across as rude when I'm 30 minutes late every single time when we're meeting up. Oh, okay, I need to be more conscious of that. And this friend takes this, as a little bit of an insult. And so then it's like, each other's rhythm a little bit better. And it's an opportunity. Conflict can be an opportunity when done well and lead to great things.
Yeah. It's hard to like see ourselves sometimes, so that when we can see ourselves through our friends, it can help us like identify a lot more of our patterns and tendencies and how they impact people. I have a dear friend who is quite ADHD, and whenever we would hang out and talk, she'd be like doing things on her phone while we were talking, and I was like so offended by it. Like I found it was like upsetting to me. I'm like, hey, I'm pouring my heart out over here, but I just was very much raised, don't rock the boat, don't initiate conflict. And so I didn't say anything for a while, and then finally I was like, hey, do you want me to like check in later and talk to you later when you're done with your phone, because it doesn't really feel like you're listening right now? And she's like, no, I'm listening to everything you're saying. And then she showed me, she was playing like a mind numbing game on it. She's like, weirdly, this helps me listen without thinking about other things if I just do like a mindless thing. And so we ended up talking about it and working through it, and it helped me. She understood like I really want presence, and I understood there might be some things that she needs to do in order to clear her mind and be able to really like take in information. And that brought us closer. But it was, a learning moment for me that better to say something in a kind way and see what happens and grow closer on the other side.
Right. And the messaging on that's tough, right? It's like when someone else is distracted, and with technology, everybody's distracted. But what you speak to is a cornerstone of friendship, which is presence. I mean, that's a gift that we give people when we're able to really just unplug everything and spend however amount of time and hear somebody. It's important in friendship.
100%. We've talked a bit about patterns and how it can be hard to recognize our patterns and gain that awareness. And I think our friendships really can be mirrors to help us understand more about ourselves. How do you help people figure out what those patterns are, or what our friendship blueprint might be in terms of how we're repeatedly showing up in different friendships throughout our lives?
I mean, the blueprint usually comes from the early wound or the early dynamic, right? And so that just becomes what gets played out later, unless somebody goes to therapy, is aware of their blueprint or maybe how it's off and wants to redo it. Because studies show that people can earn secure attachment later on in life, whether it's through a partnership or through actually diligently working in therapy, which is the goal. Everybody, if you're securely attached, you will be successful in relationships. A secure attachment has really good outcomes. The other types of attachment can create problems. And so understanding yourself, understanding where there may be gaps from things that happened, or wounds or triggers, right? Because we all have them. Everyone's got triggers. Like you said, you were just saying with your friend, that's like not feeling seen, right? She's focusing on something else. I think 99% of people would say that they don't feel seen if someone else is doing something else, that they're not honing in on them. So pointing that out, and working on yourself and really understanding your triggers, being able to acknowledge them, working on becoming more secure with yourself and showing up in a meaningful way with your friendships. It should produce good outcomes, but you're also with another person. So you can show up as far as you've gotten in your life, and you hope to find people. The goal is to pick people who have gotten to similar places that you've gotten to.
I also want to touch on reciprocity, because I think especially in adult friendships, when a lot of us are at different phases, we have different levels of responsibilities, there's a lot going on, we've reached different milestones, it can feel really tricky to find reciprocity in a way that feels good. How do we navigate that experience if one person feels like they're initiating more all the time or showing up more or remembering everything versus someone else in the relationship?
So I like to say meet people where they're at. Don't work much harder for someone who's not working hard for you. One of the most important parts of friendship is the law of reciprocity. And by the way, I always say like it's never 50-50 because life is never 50-50, but the odds should be good. And the scales can tip based on certain circumstances. Maybe someone's going through a divorce or a death in their family or something hard. They can't show up right in a good way. But so then the scales tip at that time, and you get the opportunity to show up more for your friend, and then vice versa. So the ratios can't be like 90-10. They have to be decent ratios, and they have to have some kind of good ebb and flow in the relationship of that reciprocity. You can't be the only one reaching out. You can't be the only one working hard for the friendship all the time. There's always grace given because life happens, but overall, the ratio should look good in your friendship. And that's where reciprocity comes in. And that's really vital and important because the problem is if you're in a relationship and there is not reciprocity, you build the other one, the other R, I call it, which is resentment. I'm the only one doing this. I'm the only one doing that. And so that's not going to lead to good things in a friendship.
So if that resentment starts creeping up in a friendship, what would you recommend as the next step? Is it initiating a conversation, or is it pulling back and meeting them at the effort that they're presenting, or what's a way to balance things out?
So you have a choice. You can go back to the meet people where they're at, and that's retreating and retracting and recalibrating friendships. I think that what's so fascinating about friendships is that they can always be recalibrated. Just because you're super close to someone during one season doesn't mean that you're going to be close to them in another season, but it doesn't mean that they can't still be in your life. And so you just, through the course of whatever's happened, you get to sort of pull back or recalibrate them. And so maybe they move from close to sort of a little bit out of orbit later on. And so that can happen. If someone is genuinely not showing up and you're concerned about them and you're noticing like they were maybe before, then that's worth naming and bringing up. It goes back to openness, which is what we talked about is, hey, I noticed blah, blah, blah. You're not very responsive, or I'm noticing that I'm the only one reaching out. What's up?
And assuming positive intent, maybe at first, like maybe there's something wrong, or maybe there's something that you didn't know about. So going in with that openness before you go straight to like, you never do this, or I'm the only one, like a more combative approach.
I was always trained in grad school to like avoid you statements. And we always do it, of course, like if we're upset, you made me feel blah, blah, blah. But honestly, like if you can be mindful of the you statements and just sort of lead with I'm noticing or what's up with that, and be a little bit more casual and less take the accusatory language out of it, which is the you, likely to get a better response from people.
Yeah. And asking questions too. I feel like that always helps when there's like a tough moment in a relationship or a friendship, is like approaching it with like, oh, have you noticed that things felt different? Like, I've noticed that too. Or it seems like you've been really busy lately. Like, what's been going on for you? And then obviously there's opportunity to express how you're feeling, but it's that like assume positive intent of curiosity and like genuinely wanting to understand what the heck's going on.
And I think that also speaks to personalizing stuff because we all do it on some level, and every woman has sat with their phone and ruminated at night, like, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
What happened? Confusion is sort of this thread, this universal thread that every woman has lived through in a friendship. Like, well, what happened? Like, I don't get it. And so being able to be open and inquire and take that inquiry sort of standpoint should be helpful for people to just understanding another person and maybe what they're going through in their life.
Discernment is also a hard part, I think, of friendships in adulthood. I think so many of us can be like desperate for more connection. And maybe if we haven't realized it might be a matter of depth, we think we just need more friends. We need to fill that gap. And it's easy to lose some of that discernment because you just want to like make new connections. What's your advice for picking the right friends for where we're at? Like what's the important elements that we should be looking for, whether it's like similar life stages or availability or values? What are those key points?
Discernment is becoming, I hope it becomes a buzzword because I honestly think it's undervalued in our culture and so valuable, especially not only to ourselves, but to our relationships. But that speaks back to what we talked about earlier, which was slow burn. You can only gain discernment with information and behavioral patterns and noticing things. If you fast burn something, you don't have enough information to go off of. So discernment sort of flies out the window. But you can actually get discernment through the course of time. And the funny thing is that people will just naturally reveal themselves anyways, because that's just how life goes. So you don't actually have to do that much work. But if you slow burn a relationship, and then you can use discernment, like, oh, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. This is a behavioral pattern that works for me, that doesn't work for me. And then in the end, I always say, like, you have to choose yourself and you have to value yourself. And you should never accept anything that doesn't feel good to you. If something is feeling icky in a friendship or just off, or you're feeling undervalued, that's really worthy of assessment and recalibration potentially. And I don't say like it's black and white. It doesn't mean cut people off. But if somebody shows you who they are, I mean, this is sort of the Maya Angelou stuff, but if someone shows you who they are, you have discernment to decide, like, is that for me or is that not for me? And if it's not for you, it still means being gracious and cordial and acknowledging them, but maybe they don't get access to your inner world anymore, because that should really be reserved for the people through discernment that show up, that show moral fortitude and check the boxes of the things that are important to you in a friendship.
That makes sense. Yeah, I do think discernment is, I really probably lacked it in my 20s, definitely in my teens, definitely in my 20s. And then in my 30s, I've started to really hone in on who do I feel best around? What situations do I feel best in? And just being more discerning and realizing that I actually prefer my own company now at this point in my life than being with people who don't make me feel good or who aren't aligned. So it's taken time, but it's really is life changing to be able to discern and choose.
And to discernment too, it's not just behavioral patterns or information over time. It's also the body. The soma is when we're dialed in to our bodies, we know how we feel around other people. We know if we're at ease. We know if we're on guard. And so just noticing, like, how does my body feel when I'm around this person? Or better yet, after I just got coffee with somebody, do I feel excited? Do I feel nourished? Or do I feel drained and depleted? Those are really good questions to ask yourself through discernment of, like, was this a positive encounter? Because the brain is funny. We can bypass a lot and we're pretty tolerant of BS. So, like, we'll be like, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Obviously, until it's not. But kind of those little mini check-ins, I like to say the soma check-ins or the body check-ins, are really vital when we're using discernment and become an asset to us in our lives.
That's a really good check in. That's so important. You can feel how tense you are when you check in with yourself after hanging out with certain people. And I can even recognize, like, there's a few people in my life I tend to like disassociate a bit more around and like not really be fully present. And my partner has been such an interesting mirror for that. I'll come home from seeing someone and he'll be like, you are so alive right now. Like, you are so energized, like you are lit up. And then other times he'll be like, oh, you seem pretty drained. And so being able to do that for yourself is so important, but seeing it through, like, mirrored back through someone else has also helped me learn to check in more on, like, what is my response to these social settings.
Yeah, I mean, being able to protect your energy. I mean, there's so much talk in the culture around protecting your energy. And like you said, really valuing alone time. I think there's something sacred about solitude. And we don't always, our culture doesn't really value that because we're in a very much of a more culture. but being alone and recharging on your own is, and having a good relationship with yourself is vital and really, really important. And I encourage people to like go on dates with themselves. I know it's like funny, but
Yeah.
it's sort of special too. And I have to say, I enjoy it. I enjoy my alone time now more than
Yeah.
ever. So
The
yeah.
busier you get, the more precious it is. And then you
And no,
just
and
don't
by
like,
the way, nobody can rattle that, right? Like there's no infiltration when it's just you and yourself doing stuff. So
exactly. And you stop accepting bullshit more when you're just down with yourself. Because I think like when I didn't really enjoy being with myself, I was willing to tolerate more from others. And as soon as I like put the work into loving time with myself and going out and doing solo activities, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to fill this space with people who aren't additive. So it's, yeah, that's real.
relationships at this point should just be value add, right? I mean, it's really so actually simple.
I know, it's true.
Yeah. Anything that takes from you should just be no. Like that's a no
Yeah,
for me.
subtract that shit out of your life.
Yep.
How important is it, or is it important at all, to have friendships in the same life stage as you? I think that's one of the number one things I see amongst people in their 20s and 30s is like some of their friends are settled down and having kids. Some of them are single. Some of them are jobless and figuring it out. Some of them are like, at the top of the corporate ladder. And I don't know how important it is to like match up with people who are in sync with you, or to just surround yourself with people who are doing different stuff.
So I think there's different friends for different things. I will say, having that one friend that you can go to in your worst time, not everyone's going to fill that bucket. So it's important to have I call them like the good time Charlie friends that you can do like the Sex and the City stuff and go out and grab drinks and hang out. And maybe the conversation is just light and funny and you're just having a good time and you're not really going into that sort of the depth gap. Those people are fine. I think those relationships are good. And the thing is more just knowing that's what it is. Like this is as far as the relationship goes. We have fun. They're my fun friends, but I'm not going to call them during a really hard time because that's not what the relationship is. But there's utility and there's value and they don't have to be in the same life phase. I think it's important to sort of diversify your portfolio, of having different friends for
Yeah.
different things and, and doing different things with them. And it actually enriches your life to have friends that do different things because then you can learn about, someone else is doing something, whether they're traveling the world and, you're staying home with kids, like it's sort of exciting to hear about their adventures. And so it becomes everyone's valuable in different ways. The difference is managing expectations and knowing like, okay, well, this friend is for this, that friend is for that. And then not setting yourself up for disappointment, because I think that's where people get tripped up is when they sort of don't understand, well, that's what that friendship was for. And I maybe miscalculated it. And then we went there and it backfired. And so that's where discernment also comes in.
From all of the research and clinical work that you've done with clients, are there any key reasons you've seen that we haven't touched on today for why friendships often fracture in adulthood?
Ooh. I mean, there's so many different reasons why they fracture. Sometimes it's the fast burn. Sometimes friendships, maybe it's a slow fracture of just life diverting. And that's okay. It's okay when you fizzle with a friend or there's a cooling off period sometimes with friendships and maybe there's no breach, no big seismic thing happened, but you just sort of lost your way. And that's okay too. You just accept. And I think what's beautiful with those friends is you go back in your mind and you say, I'm so grateful for the times that we had together.
Yeah.
But that life just keeps moving and we just sort of, the path's diverted. And, that's just part of the natural pruning process of life is that you're not going to be close to the same people at every juncture because life is moving and people are going into different avenues all the time. But yeah, I mean, when there's a betrayal or a fracture, that can be really decimating for people. And that's not talked about enough either. And people can be reeling from that for a really long time too. And the reasons on that are, all sorts of things.
Yeah, endless. And it's so
Endless,
painful. And I
right?
feel like it's another one of those examples where we talk endlessly about romantic betrayal, but we really don't talk much about friendship betrayal, and it hurts as much, I would say.
It
From
really
my
does.
experience with like devastating friendship breakups, it fucked with me more than romantic breakups. So it's really hard. Yeah.
Really hard, and it can take a really long time to come back, and some people honestly never come back because they're still wondering whether they got ghosted or whatever the fallout. It's still this unresolved, and it's never a good feeling to live with unresolved, and it can be really hard for people to overcome. But yes, I totally agree with you. It's almost worse in some ways than a romantic one.
Yeah. 100%. But the work that you're doing is, I think, really, really going to help people figure out how to navigate adult friendships, why friendships are so like culturally important to us, but often kind of put under like one notch under romantic relationships. But I really think like community and friendships are just as important as any other facet of our lives. So thank you for the work that you do and sharing your wisdom today. And please share with everybody where they can find you and where they can follow all your upcoming work.
They can go to my website, Dr. Elisabeth Crain. I've got all the stuff up there. And the book is in development right now and should be out in the next year or two. So I'm excited to share it with the world and really fill the gap in this arena of talking about friendship, because we talk so much about all the other stuff, but this is an important conversation too.